I call on government order of the day.
Adjourn debate on the Prime Minister's statement.
Order. Members who wish to leave the chamber may do so, but please do it in an orderly fashion. I call on government order of the day.
Adjourn debate on the Prime Minister's statement.
Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Chris Finlayson.
Mr. Speaker, it's great to be back for what will doubtless be another action-packed year, especially in the area of treaty settlements. And just last Friday, I signed a deed of settlement in the far north with Ngāti Kuri, and I want to acknowledge the support and presence of Mrs Turia, Shane Jones, Hone Harawera, Claudette Hauiti and Mike Sabin at that very important ceremony, and ask Mr Harawera to pass on to the troops up north that the Te Hiku Claims Settlement Bill is going to be introduced to the House within the next couple of weeks. Mr Speaker, over the break, a number of my colleagues indicated they were intending to retire from Parliament, and I want to wish them all the very best. They're fantastic colleagues, friends, and I am sure are going to do very well in a post-parliamentary life. And before the year gets too partisan, Mr Speaker, I also want to acknowledge your contribution. You are, beyond doubt, an outstanding Member of Parliament, have been a great Speaker, an acting Speaker, and I want to wish you all the very best for the future. There are a number of others whose retirements are being reported about at the present time, and so in advance, may I wish Dave Clendon, Stephen Browning and Rajan Prasad all the very best for the future. Mr Speaker, I hope honourable members are pleased with the progress on Memorial Park. I certainly am. The concreting of the floor has started and it should be covered by August, and the tunnel will be open by September. In fact, it's hard to believe that Helen Clark was going to have a highway going through the park right next to a school. Mr Speaker, though the unpleasant member for Wellington Central can't contain himself, every statement he makes is unpleasant. I do think it's most unfortunate. Mr Speaker, we had a very busy end to 2013. Just before Christmas, the Prime Minister, the Minister of Economic Development and I announced new film incentives, and the next 3 Avatar sequels will be filmed in New Zealand. It seems the Leader of the Opposition was apparently opposed to this wonderful announcement, though Jacinda Ardern, at least, appeared to be pleased. I've heard it said that Labour supporters in Rongotai are saying Annette King had a role in getting the Avatar sequels here. Well, that is, of course, a complete falsehood. The self-styled MP for Weta Workshop had nothing to do with that announcement, just as she did nothing in 2011 when trade union thugs were trying to destroy the film industry. And I hear the honourable member interjecting. I think she's saying that she knows something about James Cameron's film. She remembers the film The Abyss, but that was not. I think she thinks it was a documentary about what happened to the Labour Party when she was deputy leader and Phil Goff was the leader, but I'm afraid that is not correct. On the subject of these 2 venerable members, now in their 4th decade here, it's worth noting something about their careers. In the 1980s, they were zealous Rogenomes in a neoliberal government. In the 1990s, 2000s, they reinvented themselves as social democratic spendthrifts. Now in their 4th decade here, they're tribunes of the working class in a far-left Labour Party. In fact, it's been quite a journey. It doesn't matter whether they're administering liberal policies or social democratic policies or far-left policies, so long as they are the ones administering. They stand for nothing except for self-interest. They're the worst form of careerists. But looking, Mr Speaker, at the opposition today, as I do, one is left with one conclusion, that Labor is heading for an extinction event when they sell out their party's great heritage to a coalition with the Green Party. And one has only to look at the experience of Tasmania. Having entered a coalition with the Green Party in Tasmania, the Labor Party in that state is Morris dancing its way to oblivion. Listen to these words from the National Secretary of the Australian Workers' Union. He said, quote, "There's no advantage in Labor and the Labor movement being aligned with the Greens. The Greens' views and ideologies are contrary to the views and ideology of the Labor movement. I can understand why Tasmanian workers would be concerned about the destructive and negative role the Greens have played in destroying parts of the Tasmanian economy when they go to the ballot box, because that's the experience in Australia of a coalition with the Greens. The current stewards, Mr. Speaker, of the Labor Party are betraying their party. I think of some of the greats from the Labor past, people I greatly respect: Peter Fraser, Norman Kirk, Michael Bassett, Roger Douglas, Fran Wilde, Paul Swain, that wonderful, wonderful friend of mine, Winnie Laban. One could never imagine those people walking out on the traditions of the Labor Party and doing a deal with the Greens. The Greens are out to destroy them. And the Greens regard them, Mr. Speaker, as Lenin would have said about the kulaks, nothing more than useful idiots. Mr. Speaker, that is going to be the fate of the Labor Party as they turn away from their traditions, they betray their traditions. Now, in the last couple of weeks, there have been a few articles in the press about my outstanding style guide. And the style guide's actually very, very helpful. It's modelled, actually, in fact, someone sent to me Tom Shan's style guide from 1967, which was very, very similar. And the key points about speech writing are these: use plain English, avoid waffle at all costs, get to the point quickly, state the point, and move on. And that, as you can see from this speech, is exactly what a style guide should be. Where there is a need for clarity, and of course elections are about choice, and elections are about clarity. The people deserve to know, Mr. Speaker, where the parties stand on various issues. Waffle is of no use, as Mr. Cunliffe found out last week when he tried to be tricky over the baby bonus announcement. Now, among the policies dumped by Mr. Cunliffe has been his policy of letting Dr. Norman have a podium next to his at announcements, but don't be fooled. Everything is not as it seems. But they're listening very carefully because they're worried. Mr. Speaker, what we see now is a Labor Party that is selling out on every single policy. So we need clarity on some of these points. For example, the Greens support internet freedom, whereas Labor wants to shut down Facebook. The Greens want to legalise cannabis, but Labor's opposed. The Greens want to print money. Labor does it the old-fashioned way through borrowing and raising taxes. Russell Norman wants to be finance minister. David Cunliffe says no, but there could be a role for him in some of the broader economic portfolios. So we're entitled to know, Mr. Speaker, what is the true position on these and other issues. And my advice to the Labor Party, friendly, constructive advice, is that as we approach the election season, use plain language, get to the point quickly, state the point, and then move on. That's certainly the approach that I'm going to be adopting in the great seat of Rongotai later in the year, when the venerable Annette King and I front up for another fight, and she just about lost the party vote in 2011. She did thrash me on the electorate vote, but so what? Because it's the party vote, as the great Judy Kirk said, it's the party vote that matters. And I say to her, fond of her as I am on a personal level, she's hopeless, and I'm very much looking forward
to a good scrap in Rongotai in 2014 as she stands there for the 40th time.
I call the honourable member Philip Twyford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was worried